I'm delighted to be with you. My name is Steve Haancke. I'm a professor of applied economics at the Johns Hopkins University. I've spent the last 30 years being deeply involved in solving currency and inflation crises around the world. Many of those crises have been very similar to the one you're facing in Lebanon. I have looked very carefully at the Lebanese situation, and the Lebanese Institute for Market Studies has published a book I co-authored with Dr. Kurt Schuler. It's in Arabic, and it deals with the solution that could be instituted within 30 days in Lebanon. That's what I'll be addressing right now. Lebanon is facing a currency hyperinflation crisis. Until the currency and hyperinflation crisis is settled and smashed, nothing can be done in Lebanon. I've witnessed this kind of thing many, many times. The crisis in the currency, which has depreciated 75% this year against the US dollar, and the hyperinflation, which today, by the way, I measure inflation every day in Lebanon, and the inflation rate is 274% today. It's the third highest inflation rate in the world. So the epicenter of the problem, the primary problem, is a currency hyperinflation problem in Lebanon. It must be fixed and stability must be established. While stability might not be everything, everything is nothing without stability. None of the other problems, the debt problem, the banking problem, the subsidy problem, the electricity problem, and you name it in Lebanon, can be solved unless you have currency stability and no inflation. The way to establish that is with a currency board. A currency board is an institution in which the Lebanese pound would be issued, but it would be backed 100% with US dollar reserves. And it would trade at an absolutely fixed exchange rate with the anchor currency and reserve currency, the US dollar. Now that means that the new Lebanese pound would be a clone of the US dollar. It would be exactly equal to the US dollar. If you didn't like your Lebanese pound, you'd take it in and exchange it at the fixed exchange rate under free convertibility for US dollars, and vice versa, obviously. There have been over 70 currency boards in existence. The first one was established in Mauritius in 1849. Today there are 12. The most famous one, of course, is the one in Hong Kong. There's never been a failure of a currency board. The currency board will allow GDP to start growing rapidly, foreign reserves to start increasing rapidly, inflation to be smashed and roughly at the US level, and the debt to GDP ratio would go down sharply. When we did this in Bulgaria, the currency board, by the way, the inflation went down from 1,230% per year to a year later, it was 1.6%. The GDP was declining at 8% per annum. And the year after we put the currency board in 1997, it was a plus 4.3%. The fiscal deficit was minus 8.1% before we put the currency board in. A year later, it was a surplus of 1.1%. The foreign reserves before we put the currency board in, 864 million US dollars. A year later, 3.1 billion. The debt to GDP ratio was 148%. in the year before we put the currency board in, that's almost the Lebanese rate. Lebanon is 172%. Today, the debt to GDP ratio in Bulgaria is 18.6%. That's the second lowest of any member union. So these work. I've done them in Estonia, Lithuania, Bosnia Herzegovina, Bulgaria, and those crisis situations in all those countries were turned around instantly by the installation of a currency board. That establishes stability. It gives the whole economy a huge confidence shock. It allows for reforms to start taking place. And obviously, the donor community will become very positive on Lebanon once they see that Lebanon has taken the first step to stabilize the economy, smash inflation, and rid the economy of the uncertainty surrounding the Lebanese pound. Thank you for your attention.